crack on. So lots of people involved with this work. They're all listed there. I hope I have got everyone in in the list there. So I'll just start with my childhood. Really, I was born in Norfolk and raised in North Norfolk. And as a little boy, I spent a lot of time outside, and a lot of my time, probably from about 7 or 8 years old, and I was allowed to roam free, was out in and around ponds, probably doing lots of dangerous things and doing lots of things I shouldn't do. But I just got immersed in pond environments and fresh waters, really. And my link really is this little fish on the top right, which is the crucian carp, which is a beautiful orangey gold fish that I fell in love with when I was little. And in later life, and even now, really, I still love that fish, and I love the ponds that it came from. And so that really got me sitting by ponds and involved in ponds. So a bit more context. Here's a picture of me when I was 10 years old. And here's a picture of my dad. So I come from Bodham, which is a very rural area. And really all the stuff that I know about ponds and the stuff we've been trying to do with ponds comes from this man, which is Richard Waddingham, the guy on the right. He's a farmer in North Norfolk who sadly passed away a few years ago. But almost everything that we've been doing in the Norfolk Ponds Project and at UCL all came from his astonishing brain. And he was the person really that got us into the idea of resurrecting ghost ponds, which I'll explain to you in a minute. We used to drive around the farm and we'd drive, down little country lanes, and he'd always point at this pond that had been filled in next to his farm, which appeared like a sort of dark patch in the field. And I'll show you a picture of it later. And he sort of urged us, why don't we start bringing these ponds back to life? There'll definitely be a pond there if you dig there. And after a few years, I sort of twigged. I thought that's just a really, really good idea. And then we sort of started doing it. So I owe everything really to this wonderful man, Richard Waddingham. So here is a map of Norfolk. And here you can see all of the ponds in Norfolk. So this is all the contemporary ponds. So there's 23,000 ponds in Norfolk. So if you're thinking to yourself, how can I make some difference to freshwater conservation and indeed terrestrial conservation, the answer might be to focus quite strongly on ponds. And yet, really, we're talking about the most abundant, but the most neglected and least funded habitat in terms of conservation. But as I can show you, it's probably the habitat where we can do the most good in the current era. So there's the map of Norfolk and all its ponds. You see a particularly rich, load of ponds in the middle. As you come down to Breckland, obviously you've got pingos. So most of the ponds in that map are farmland ponds. But as you come down south, you've got lots of pingos, which explains a lot of that high density you can see there. But the key thing really is that there's 23,000 existing ponds. There are 10,000, to get that correct, and I believe it would be many more than that, ghost ponds. So these are ponds that were filled in after the Second World War or during the Second World War, often to increase the area of land. So a few were filled in before that and some after that, but that was the main era. So it's that kind of dig for victory, get more farmland to farm and feed the country. And so we filled in colossal numbers of ponds in that era. But even though we filled them in, they kind of haunt the landscape, really. So I should also say that all the photographs of my talk today are undoctored. I've not added anything or changed the photographs here whatsoever. They're all undoctored. So they appear in the fields. As the top left, you can see a puddle in the field. Top right, you can see a dark patch, a black patch, and that was the pond that Richard used to point to near his farm in Bristol. He'd point across the track and say, "Look at that, Carl." And I once walked across there and literally got stuck in that, almost went up to my waist in mud in that hole there. But it's unfarmable, and there it is. The bottom left-hand corner, you can see ghost ponds appear where the crops mature earlier, just that little bit more moist in the soil, so they appear as sort of early crop marks, early season. And in grassland, bottom right, you can see a pond that appears as a different species of grass and some nettles in a meadow. So they almost always appear in the landscape and leave some kind of trace. But can we bring them back from the dead? We tried that. So way back in 2013, 2014, we started working on ghost ponds. And this is the first one that we ever did. It's in Guestwick in mid-Norfolk. It's a farmland pond. And you can see in the top left picture, you've got a pond that's circled there, next to a hedge. And then the bottom picture from the 2014 map, so the top map is probably early 1900s. By 2014, we've lost the hedge and we've lost the pond. And you can bet your life that the hedge was dug up and the hedge bank was then put into the pond. And so that was a common scenario, to lose hedges and to lose ponds. And it can be, done very quickly, but equally you can undo that very quickly as well. So there's the pond that we started on, and we managed to get 3 crazy farmers in a way who would let us dig up their fields to resurrect their ponds. So our first project resurrected or restored 3 ghost ponds. And here is that ghost pond. So you can see here, it's just a slight depression in the field behind me and my friend. The tape measure sort of goes through it. So it's evident in the landscape, but there aren't many great crested newts in that at the moment, so you can only go from, you don't have to do a pre-survey, you can only get better really after that. So there is the pond before we did anything. Here we've got the pond after we've been digging for a bit. So the first thing we did is put a trench through it, sort of archaeological way. And we see we're measuring here, because what we found, this was the most amazing discovery initially really, is that we could find the old pond underneath the soil, and it's represented there by those very black, dark sediments under the field, which you would find nowhere else in that field unless you were digging in another lost pond. So there was the lost pond under the field, its sediments intact, and it could be found. So obviously we can dig into it. So there we are, sort of found the pond and discovering it. Then we continued sort of digging, and we ended up really with a resurrected pond that looked like a bomb crater. And you think to yourself, looking at this, you think that's not very good. And we thought, well, we'll just have to see how that turns out, went away. The key thing, you can see Emily in the middle there. So it started to fill up. This is one day after resurrection. So it started to fill up with water already. And you can see the black sediments of the old pond in the bottom there and underneath her feet. So that was good. Go on 1 year on after that, and the pond looks a bit raw, but it was full of aquatic plants. So if you know your aquatic plants, you can see broadleaf pondweed in the middle. To the right, you can see the beautiful flowers of water crowfoot, and underneath the water was stoneworts and a whole range of plants. And they were covering the whole pond in less than a year. So we were absolutely, utterly astonished by that. And then we did the most important bit, maybe the most important, or one of the most important discoveries we're ever going to make, really, is that we took the sediments from underneath the fields that we were working on. And one of the ponds had been filled in 150 years ago. We took the sediments into a greenhouse, where we put them into seed-free filtered water, covered them over so nothing could get in them, and we're able to grow plants from 150 years ago in these tanks in a greenhouse. So these are fields that have been sprayed, ploughed, fertilized, drained, and yet they still preserved the pond in the sediment. And many of the plants that lived in that old ponds were alive and came back into the tanks. So it's no surprise that we saw such an amazingly rapid response in our ponds when we did them. So we thought we were really onto something here. And we kept on studying the ponds and kept on doing more ponds. And now in the Norfolk Ponds Project, I think we've resurrected 30 or 40 ghost ponds now, and we always get the same results. It's amazing. It must be the most successful form of freshwater restoration, maybe of any habitat restoration that there is. I don't say that lightly. So the top picture shows a pond in Bodham in North Norfolk, the centre of the known universe, before restoration. And the bottom picture shows you the same pond just 3 years or less than 3 years after restoration. There were 25 different wetland plants in that pond, and including some really rare things. Some were found that nowhere else within the catchment other than that pond. So, very, very quickly, you can have a very, very important pond present. And the key thing really is it doesn't cost very much. It takes 1.5 to 2 days of time and a few £1,000s worth of money, and you've got a massive, massive transformation of the landscape. And here's what a pond looks like if you leave it a bit more time. This is a 7-year-old ghost pond. Looks like it's been there forever. And these are extremely high quality, stunning ponds, not zombies, if you like. So the question that then loomed really for me quite early on was, what about Norfolk's ancient pond ghosts? What about the ancient pingo ponds of someone like Thompson Common? So Thompson Common, you can see top left picture there, is in the Breckland, as many of you will know. It has 400 or so Ice Age pingo ponds. So these are ponds that were formed at the end of the last glaciation, and they are mega diverse ancient ponds with many rare plants and many rare invertebrates. And at a European scale, they're some of the most important ponds in Europe. So these are very, very special ponds, treasured ponds in England and in Norfolk in particular, obviously. But these ancient ponds at Thompson Common are surrounded by infilled ghost pingo ponds. I'd known that for years, driving around looking and looking at old maps and looking at aerial photographs. So I thought there's huge potential here. So just one thing to get across, these are pingos and not pingoos, like a lot of people say. So, and they're formed really, it's freeze thaw of ice underneath the ground in fissures. And you've got this freezing and thawing and the ground dropping and rising, and you end up ultimately forming a depression. Please ask a much cleverer geomorphological person than me exactly how they're formed. And we still don't really understand how Thompson Common's pingo ponds and inverted commas were formed. But they are, we do know, it's Ice Age, end of the Ice Age ponds. So we're trying to get funding to work on this in 2015, following our initial farmland ghost pond project. But I think everyone thought we were mad, so we didn't, get anywhere then. But as time drifted on and we started to publicize the results we were getting at the farmland, more and more interest grew in this. And the key thing when you look at this picture is you can see Thompson Common there with all those ponds. They're shaded different colors in the different compartments at Thompson Common. But equally surrounding Thompson Common were loads and loads of ghost ponds, and there remain, hundreds and hundreds of ponds that are left. So Watering Farm, which is one of the key fields next to Thompson Common, which had pingos in it, was purchased by Norfolk Wildlife Trust in 2017. It'd been used for arable and for pigs, and it was in a very, very poor state. And the Wildlife Trust really wanted to buy it to buffer Thompson Common, if you like. That was the initial reason, to sort of protect Thompson Common from the arable, from the runoff. And we were invited to go and scope out the potential at this point to look at ghost pingos. So the interest started to rise at this point when this bit of land had been purchased. And the first thing we did was look for pingos. And I'll just go back one there, sorry. Yeah. So first thing we did was look for pingos. And the easiest way to find it was looking at aerial photographs, in this case satellite imagery. And what you can see here is really sort of clear evidence of little red blobs for lost ponds. These are bits of the ground which are wetter in the extreme drought year of 2018. So we were lucky that 2018 was a drought year. You could see a lot of these lost ponds in the landscape. And we worked out that there were 26 potential lost ponds just at this Watering Farm site next to Thompson Common. Went out into the fields to look, and again we found, as we were in the farmland, really clear evidence in the field. You could see the ghost ponds showing up really as different species of grass, very slight depressions. They were still evident. There was still a ghostly presence, if you like, in the landscape. So we thought this is really, really promising. So what did we do? Well, the first thing we did was we recommended to Norfolk Wildlife Trust that they didn't deep plough the site. There was an initial plan to, as part of grassland restoration, to deep plough it, and we were very concerned that would destroy the buried deposits, the buried wetland deposits of the old pingos. So luckily, deep ploughing was averted to save the possible ghost pingo ponds. And I put good decision. I want to emphasize, I think this was probably one of the best conservation decisions that's ever been made, was not to deep plough this site. And then we got lucky. Some money became available through the BFER project. So thank you so much to you guys via Heritage Lottery. And we were asked to resurrect 12 ghost pingo ponds, to actually bring them back to life, but also to do some science on them. So to investigate geomorphological, sedimentological, hydrological, and ecological aspects, to involve citizen scientists. If any of you are here now did that, thank you so much. And then to determine the success of this pingo resurrection in terms of, the biology, how successful is it? So we got invited to do this work. I'm very, very excited to do so. So here is Watering Farm, which is one of the key sites we'll be talking about. And what you can see on that is you can see the 26 depressions. You can see some other ones at Brecks Grange, just to the south as well. The ones that we resurrected as part of the project and a little while after the project as well are the ones with yellow dashes around them. So all nearest to the woodland there. And of course, Thompson Common's just to the north. There's lots of pingos in the woods, and then you come onto the open ground of Thompson Common just to the north. So there's the site. Before anything was done, there was an enormous ditch. So this is a winter photograph, as you can see. Enormous ditch draining the site. So you've got a landscape where the ponds have been filled in, it's been farmed, it's been abandoned, after the farming stopped in 2018, it's starting to revert to grassland. But a key thing you can see there is this enormous drain. So the site is very, very heavily drained. And so the water is, coming off the site very, very quickly. It's not a wet site anymore. And that's lots and lots of under drains feeding into this big side drain running up the middle. So the first thing we did was some hydrological work, really. So this is sort of a year or two of work, and citizen scientists were helping with this, was to look to see how the water levels were varying in that field, in the different depressions, to see if we excavated them, would we get water? Because you can't get a pond unless you've got water. So that's one of the things we were doing. So we've got lots of water level data in the ponds, in the landscape, to see if we would get ponds. We also did some initial sort of studies of sediments by going down with an auger, looking for these sort of dark organic sediments that would indicate lost ponds. I call that searching for gold, really. That's what you want, is to find these old seed banks. So we did a lot of that. And from that, we were able to prioritize what we thought the best pingos were to go out of all the ones that were present. And that turned out to be the ones that you highlighted there with the yellow dashes. And so in what we call the Lost Pond Project, so we were funded to do 12 or more sites, but we did a few more than that as well. So, and some were done by Norfolk Wildlife Trust at Mere Farm, which we helped with, did some at East Harling. And so quite a lot of sites were done in the end. So 24 sites were resurrected over 2022 to 2024. We studied 22 of those sites for plants, some for invertebrates, and 2 we've never been able to get out because they're protected by bulls to this present day, but we managed to study a good proportion of them. And here we are going in. So here's the digger. So everyone's standing back. I'm taking the picture, and it was quite a scary moment at this point, because you just think, what are you going to find? Until you put the digger bucket in, you don't really know what you're going to find. So we're starting here in September 2021, about to dig into the ground, the first one we did. The first thing you do when you want to look for a pingo is dig a well-placed trench. You want to dig a trench that goes all the way through the middle of where you think you need to dig. And then the idea is you find the old sediments, by doing that, if you're in the right place, and nearly always are, luckily. You do that. Then you keep on digging down. And what you need to know is when am I digging through infill or natural soil, and when am I digging? How far do you go down? And what you're always looking for is little signs that you're digging through infilled ponds. So they come in all sorts of forms in terms of pottery, bits of plastic, bits of old carrier bag, all sorts of bits of arable agricultural machinery. And in this case, you can see you've got some Iron Age baling twine there. So it's an indication to keep on digging down. And this is the ideal scenario. So here we're down about a meter below the surface in a quite widened trench by this stage, and we can see the lovely black organic deposits of a lost pond. And the top right picture there shows you what lost pond deposits look like in the ideal sense. So you can see lots of bits of snails, lots of beautifully pressed leaves of terrestrial plants and also aquatic plants. And of course, in that matrix is packed with seeds in the perfect preservation medium. It's dark, it's oxygen free, it's cold. You cannot get better preservation. It's better than the Millennium Seed Bank, but don't tell them. So it's the perfect preservation for seeds and for to keep things alive for a long period of time. And that's what you're after. And of course, that's what we found in quite a lot of the places. So we were thrilled at that. So, and when we've done the trench in one direction, and you think you found the pond in one direction, and you keep on digging outwards really until the pond starts to peter out, so you can't see the organics anymore. And that means you're probably getting to the edge of where a pond or wet depression was. And then you dig a trench in the other direction, so you form a cross. And that way you can sort of find the pond in both dimensions and try and work out its shape and size as well, because many of these ponds aren't mapped, we don't know. So we have to work it out from what we can see on the ground. So we do it in an archaeological way. We take our time. We're constantly observing and luckily working with some very, very clever people like Tim Holt Wilson, and who's standing there in the middle there. And you're carefully inspecting the sediments to see, when do we stop? What are we looking at here? And then, of course, once you think you've found the pond in both directions, you just need to start digging, and you start to dig out the pond. So here we can see there's quite a big excavation, and there's a long way to go still. See a lot of sharp edges and steep slopes at this point. And the idea is you dig the excavation as big as it needs to be, and create lots and lots of shallow water. We will never know exactly what the edges of these lost pingo ponds look like, but you can bet from especially ponds at Thompson Common that you'll got quite shallow edges. That's what we do. One of the other things we do is, and again, this is staff from Norfolk Wildlife Trust, helping with the digging, and they've got all the John Preston, all the sort of seed bank stuff's on the dumper there. So if we do dig out some of the seed bank, we never throw it away. We always keep it in a separate pile. You can see that stuff in the dumper is a different color to the spoil heap to the left. And this is the ideal finished result, really. So you've got an excavation, lots of dark sediments in the middle, and any dark sediment that we've dug out, we then put back in at this stage and cover over areas where, there's exposed subsoil, things like that. We want to get as much as that organic seed bank material back into the pond. So that's the ideal finished result. So it doesn't look like much, but if you can leave a pond in that state, then I can't tell you how exciting it is, because you just know that amazing things going to happen. So the winter will then fill it up with water, and then by the spring, and even by sometimes January, February, if it's warm after Christmas, you will start to get plants recolonizing. Other things that we did was we broke the drains. So, and this was again very clever stuff from John Preston at Norfolk Wildlife Trust. He had the idea really of filling up the site with the excavated soil from the Pingo depression. So the drain on the left got completely filled up with sediment from the excavations. We got rid of it very easily in a really, really clever way. And then any drains coming in and out of the ponds, which we saw a lot of drains, all sorts of ages. I might start a drain museum one day. we block the drains. So we block the drains in and out. So we're basically undoing, we're busting drains, re-excavating ponds, filling in ditches. We're undoing everything that was done in the past. There's undoing rather than restoring in many ways. And this just shows you the setting here. So you can see that you've got Ghost Pingo, one underway, another one half finished. We're moving along through the landscape over a period of 2 or 3 years, resurrecting these pingos, and that's Thompson Water in the distance and Thompson Common out to the right. So they're really raw at this stage. What happened next? So what I'm going to show you now, I think for me is the most astonishing thing I've ever seen in ecological restoration all the years I've been working. I can't really still quite believe it. So I'm going to show you what happened next. So the first thing is, and this is a pond at Woodland Farm, is we saw rapid change. So here is a pond that's just been finished in the top picture, and there's the same pond exactly a year on, absolutely full of aquatic plants and many species present. And that's the landowners at Woodland Farm at the back. They're actually listening to their own pond. And that's one of the best, even after a year, that's one of the best ponds I've ever seen. It was just absolutely astonishing. Here's another one. And this is actually the same pond a bit earlier on. One of the key things we want to get across here is that the reason I said a duck's bottom can't plant this in 9 months is that aquatic plant seeds, wetland plants, move via wildfowl in particular. So ducks and swans and geese eat plants. They especially like the seeds because they're very tasty, full of energy. And of course, they go to another site and it goes in one beak and comes out the other beak at the bottom, and they deposit plant seeds all over the place. And that's the main ways that plants disperse. And seeds are more viable if they've gone through the digestive tract of a duck than they are if they don't. So they're adapted to go through wildfowl. But there's no, and just a key point to make, there's no way that natural dispersal via ducks or other mechanisms can fill ponds up that quickly with plants. It has to be the seed bank. It's the only possible way. It takes years and years otherwise. So we're seeing this really rapid colonization of plants, thousands and thousands of individual plants all coming up, in less than a year in these beautiful clear water excavations. So I'm going to show you some different pictures of ponds now. So here we've got, again, 2 ponds. And one of the key things, this is just 2 years on. We're seeing not just a few plants and, isn't it nice? We're seeing extremely high plant cover and very high structural complexity in just 2 years. And they're also just very visually beautiful environments. It's a privilege to see them. Here's another one. Here's another one. That's the beautiful greater yellow press there, which had a really good year there. And here we've got before and after pictures again. So the top picture is that excavation I was showing you earlier. And the picture below is more or less the same spot after 2 years, or less than 2 years. And we're talking about mega species-rich ponds, less than 2 years after restoration, that are harbouring huge numbers of species. We've got many species with stoneworts in, many ponds with stoneworts in. So here is that same pond in the previous slide. See 3 different species of stonewort. These are macroalgae. The reason I'm highlighting these is because these are really rare species. So stoneworts, there's about 40 species in Britain. 20 of them are extremely rare, and they're regarded really as really good indicators of high water quality and really high ecological integrity. And we were seeing these things coming up all over the place, and extremely rare species as well, such as the one in the middle, which is Tolipella glomerata. I'm sure you all knew that. Here's another pond before Resurrection, just after, with all that lovely black sediment on view. And there's exactly the same scene again, exactly the same shot, repeat photos after less than 1 year. So you see it's looking good, full of water, lots of plants. less than 2 years. It's absolutely stunning and brimming in this year as well, because it was a very, very wet year in 2024. And this is the amazing thing. So after just 1.5 years in this pond, we've already recorded 40 wetland plants in that pond, which is an astonishing number. 30, I mean, 2020 is good, 30 is amazing, 40 is out of this world. So they're extremely species-rich ponds. Here's another one. So here we've got watering farm Pingo 18, 9 months after restoration. So you can see it's just started to fill with water, and it's getting, becoming a pond. And then you can see less than 2 years after, and it's formed this beautiful, shallow, swampy pond. Now here we are, this is 2025, so I'm going to show you some of the data for this year. We already just finished surveying. We had to get in quick this year because the ponds are drying up, so it's extremely dry. But anyway, this year, in 2025, I was there, and we recorded 48 different wetland plants at this moment in 2025. This doesn't include all the ones from previous years, so the total list is probably near 60. 48 different wetland plants, which is the second most diverse pond I've ever surveyed in my entire life. It was just magnificent, skipping around like a little schoolboy. And I'm back in childhood running around these ponds. And I'm going to show you this. I don't have many plots. I've just all pictures today, but I better show you this. I think this is the most amazing thing. So here we've got the ponds on Thompson Common on the left, and the ponds that we resurrected. So there are 400 ponds on Thompson Common, and in a 400 pond survey in 2015, 136 wetland plants were recorded at Thompson Common, which is an astonishing number of wetland plants, as you might expect from one of the best pond nature reserves in Europe. And you can see there's 56 species still at Thompson, which aren't found in our ghosts. But the amazing, there's 80 different species are shared between Thompson Common and our ghost ponds. But we've also got 20 unique species only found in our ghost ponds. And you've got to remember, we're comparing 400 ponds with 20 that we've done. So we're comparing 400 ponds at Thompson Common with just 20 ghost pingos that we've done. We've got 100 wetland plants recorded, and we're currently representing, after just 2 or 3 years, 63% of Thompson Common's wetland flora are found in these ponds we've resurrected. Now that to me is utterly astonishing, that we're able to sort of create a little bit of land there, which are farmed land and pig farms, things like that, which are actually getting towards the quality after 2 or 3 years of one of the most impressive nature reserves in Britain and Europe. But that is, I think, absolutely gobsmacking. The other thing to say is we're not just finding lots of species, we're finding very important species of plants. So there are many nationally rare wetland plant species that occur at Thompson Common, TC. And many of those very rare plants at Thompson Common are finding a home in our ghost pingos, and therefore we're expanding their range. So species like the fen pondweed in the bottom left, which is Potamogeton coloratus, or Uinanthe fistulosa, the tubular water dropwort, are found in our ghost ponds. It's amazing. We're also finding nationally rare plants that don't occur at Thompson Common, perhaps did occur, maybe gone extinct, in our ghost ponds. So these are extremely rare wetland plants. And you can see there's 5 listed there. Here's one of them. This is Potamogeton gramineus, the various leaved pondweed. So that's found in one of our ghost pingos. In fact, we've got it growing in a tank at the moment from from some of the underground muds as well. It's nationally threatened. It's only known, before we found it at the ghost pond, for one other site in Norfolk. So we've now found its second site in Norfolk, and its third site is in one of our tanks at the moment. This is a species that had largely disappeared from Norfolk. Is now coming back into the flora again, giving it a route back. This is Cara curta, the lesser bearded stonewort. Again, like gramineus, extremely rare. This is Schedule 8 red data book species. It's absent from Thompson Common, only has a few sites in Britain, and that has occurred in our pingos. So we're thrilled with what's happening. I'm agog with what's happening. I can't believe it. And it gets even better, really. And we haven't got all the answers to this, but I'll hint. I'll do some hint. I'll hint at stuff for you. Question is, how old are these plants? How these things are coming back from the seed bank? There can be no doubt that. We're proving that in greenhouse experiments at the moment. We did a little bit of this a few years ago in a greenhouse in Suffolk. It was provided to me by a very nice John Sanderson. We were able to grow the plants, grow the mud, stuff from the muds underneath the field at Watering Farm in the excavations. What we don't know is how old these plants are. Are they hundreds of years old? Are they thousands of years old? We will find out the answer to that quite soon. That's what we're working on at the moment. And other things that we found. So obviously, if you've got lots of plants, you've got extremely good habitat, because in ponds, everything lives in the plants, just like everything lives in the trees in a forest. So a pond full of plants is a pond full of invertebrates. So Tony Irwin, the brilliant Tony Irwin, lists 30 nationally rare pingo fen water beetles for Thompson Common. It's famous for its water beetles. And of these 30 national rare species, we've got at least 5 now occurring at Watering Farm, probably more in the recent surveys, which we're still looking at all the species under the microscope as we speak. So we're finding extremely rare plants, we're finding extremely rare invertebrates. And the other thing is that we're finding all the different brilliant amphibians that you'd hope to find: great crested newt, common toad, smooth newt, common frog, and grass snake. We're recording all of these things in our excavations, and we're finding in particular lots of really good sites for frog, and lots of good sites for great crested newt, for example, and thrilled to see grass snakes and things like that getting into the landscape. So these are all expanding. These are species which are declining, which are now expanding. And then if anyone can explain this to me, I'd love to know what it is. In nearly all of the excavations that we've done, we've got 9-spine stickleback. We haven't moved any fish. There are no hydrological connections to anywhere else. They're isolated ponds, and yet nearly all of them have got 9-spined stickleback in. In fact, that's in nearly every single Thompson Common pond as well, even though Thompson Common's ponds dried out entirely in 2022. How on earth does this species survive? And how does it disperse as quickly? That's a conundrum. And it's a beautiful, quite rare little fish, the 9-spined stickleback. And the males, when they're trying to attract a female, go jet black with little white flecks on their spines or their fins. And they make a little nest and try and attract a female into the nest. So incredible, exciting little species that's, really going crazy through our ponds. Other things that are interesting is archaeology. We're really careful doing the excavations not to destroy any archaeology and to record it all as carefully as we could. So we did find like old bits of wood with some marks in it, some cut marks. That was dated to 1350 BC, you can see there. And nearly every pond we go to, we find evidence of burnt flint. So there's evidence that people were, using hot stones to cook, boil water, especially obviously flint, because that's the abundant material, heated over a fire, put into water. And we find lots of deposits around and odd flints here and there that were burnt. So there's evidence that these wet depressions, these wetlands in the past were used by people, and so there's a really nice archaeological story there to tell. So I'm just going to conclude now, really, and I'll pose this to you. How many ancient habitats can be restored as quickly as I've just shown you? Rivers, lakes, woodlands, grasslands. Anyone who works on those things will know it's definitely no way. And we're really largely, not doing great at restoring a lot of these things. And why is this so successful? It's the power of seed banks, and it's the power of nature to recover itself. If we just undo the badness of the past, we uncover these wetland deposits, and there's scope to do amazing things here, not just in the region, but all over the world in this respect. We've found a way of restoring things, nature's cleverest route for doing so. What future work would we like to do if we had a crystal ball and lots of money? we'd love to find out a lot more about how these ice age depressions formed. It baffles me, and many clever people in me don't know the answer yet. So there's still lots to learn about how these depressions formed. What are we actually looking at? We know they're ancient ponds, but how old, when were they formed? How were they formed? What would the landscape have looked like in the early Holocene before human influence? What kind of wetland landscapes were these like? Who was using those ice age depressions in the ancient past and why? We've got initial insights, really, I guess. And then with the ecology and biodiversity, which I'd really love to do more on, how long can these wetland plants live for underground as seeds? A lot to find out for there. How many rare species can we recover? Can we recover more extinct species? Really extremely rare things. What is there still to come back? Probably all sorts of stuff. How closely are we restoring ancient wetland plant communities to what used to be present? I would suggest really close, but there's more to find out. Will the pool frog colonize our sites? Will it move out of Thompson Common and get into our sites? It's exciting to think of. Probably the answer is yes. I'd love to watch that happen. And how will our ghost pingos evolve through time? What is the story? Will they keep on gathering species like that? What's going to happen to them? So many questions, so many lost ponds. And this is the key thing, really, is that there are hundreds of or maybe thousands of lost ghost pingo ponds still to do, like the one I'm pointing at there, that green bit in the field. So lots of work still to do. And that's it, really. And thank you, really. So thank you to all the people that supported this, all the people that did the research, and obviously especially to the BFER project, Norfolk Wildlife Trust and Heritage Lottery for funding this, but also to Breckland farmers, again, who also funded up work elsewhere on their farms that allowed us to do more ponds. So yeah, thanks so much.
Thank you, Carl. That really was a most fascinating whistle-stop tour of the pingos. I'm sure everyone will agree. We've got a couple of comments in the chat that just says about the amazing results. It was terrific and fascinating presentation, and thank yous. What there isn't is any questions, because I think you've just blown people away with all the pictures and the startling facts, really, and your discoveries that you've found over the last few years.
You're too kind, Tracy. You're too kind. Too kind.
Bless you. We've got another one from Jane, who says, amazing. Thank you so much for your work. I don't know if there is anybody who is on the call who wants to ask Carl a question or anything that he hasn't covered, or he might be able to talk about with some of his future projects. Is there anybody who has anything they'd like to ask or pose to Carl? Oh, Carl, we've got a question.
Oh, I'm ready. I'm ready for any question.
You can't take me down. Someone did say they would send an email to you asking some questions and things. Is that okay? They're gonna. It says I will send an email to Carl asking as to Suffolk parishes. I'm not sure what that means.
No, well, I'm
but you'll get an email from somebody called from Guy. Anyway, there's a question here that then says, do they need maintenance? Do they get clogged up?
The answer is, I guess in time, eventually trees will start to grow around them. And so if that's the case and they start to get heavily shaded by trees, then you need to cut the trees back a bit to keep them open. They really are best as open ponds, really. But also, you can really the right level of grazing will keep them open and will be good for the pond. So it's a matter of introducing grazers and leave them for a few years because they need to recover. The ground is very fragile to start with, and then allow grazing to come in, and that keeps them open. And really, there shouldn't really be much more management than that. Really, it's light management once you've done the work. Yeah.
We've got some other questions here. One of them also asks about how can they contact you and email you about more related topics. But if you're okay, are we able to share your contact details when we share the webinar, Carl?
Yeah, you can share my email. Yeah.
Okay, right. The next question is there funding currently for resurrecting ghost ponds?
Well, only if they've got any funding, we'd love to have it. I think you can do it you can get funding for ghost ponds in the new agro-environment schemes when they get up and running, and there's some clarity there. So, but really, we're at the point where we need funding now. We want to do more, and we need funding. So, I honestly think there's nothing more important to fund than this, and yet we haven't got funding yet. So we're after it. Yeah, if there is any funding, we want it. We want to do more of this, please.
Okay. Colin asked, in what circumstances do you need planning permission to excavate a pond?
Well, I guess the answer is when someone fills in a pond, I don't think they get planning permission to fill in a pond. And if you create a completely new pond, I think it depends which planning authority you're in. If it's a completely new pond, then I think you're often advised to go through the planning process. But if you're digging out a pond where a pond used to be, restoring it, really, we've never had to go through planning for that. I've certainly never opened that door.
Okay. Neil says that their pingo in Boughton gets colonised by reeds. So I guess he's perhaps asking, is there anything they can do, or is this normal?
I'd have to know more. I'd have more information than that, really. So maybe if I get an email or something, or and a picture, it's really hard to answer that one. It could be a brilliant pond with reeds in, or it could be a pond that needs management. Yeah, but without a picture, it's hard to say.
Okay, so Neil may well get in touch with an image and some further information. Okay, someone else again asked for your email, so we'll deal with that. Barry asks, I always assumed that fish eggs come on weed brought in by birds. Is that a possibility?
It's possible, but it's one of those things that sort of people say, but there's never been any evidence for it, really. So it's possible. We don't really know a lot of this stuff, actually. My theory at the moment to explain the fish, if I had to make a guess, is that the eggs somehow are really resistant to desiccation when the ponds dry out, and they sort of survive as eggs, and in some way. But I really don't know the answer to that. Do herons just drop them systematically?
Okay.
It's the most beautiful mystery. I don't know the answer.
Okay. Someone said here, Andrew has said, Carl, fabulous work and presentation. You mentioned that some plants are now rare in Thompson Common ponds, but they're coming back in Pingo and Ghost ponds. Any ideas why they died out in Thompson Common ponds?
I think so. I think this is the key thing. So there are lots of plants that are just really rare. They're just rare, and they might be that they turn up in Thompson Common every so often, or maybe they have been lost. But Thompson Common isn't by any means pristine. We don't know much about what's affecting it yet, but you do get nitrogen and phosphorus in rainfall and in groundwater, so potentially it's got a bit more enriched, and that would push some plants out, for example. We don't really have the answers to that yet. We need the answers. And it might be that fresh excavations and exposure of seed banks and less competition, allows some really things to get a foothold for a while, really rare things. So there's lots to discover there, really. But what we do know is that every time we go these ghost pingos, we keep on finding more things that I just can't believe are there. I can't believe it. I am skipping through the grass, like I'm 8 years old again. I literally can't contain myself, I make a squealing noise that can be heard from a mile distant.
Thank you. Pearl asks, do you also work with people discovering underground streams and people restoring water pumps? As these are all kind of related.
No.
Okay. that was your answer, Pearl.
No, I don't. And I also don't. I don't know. This is a little thought. There's quite a lot of people using the term ghost. Ghost woods, ghost this, ghost that. But I think it really is ghost ponds because they have a seed bank, don't they? They are actually alive. They aren't dead. A lot of these sort of things are lost. They aren't ghostly. They're truly lost. So I would say that. Anyway, I'll keep quiet now.
No, that's fine. We've got one last question here. I'm conscious we've only got about 5 minutes left of the total session time anyway. But Neil asks, what is the best way to deal with issues like duckweed? In our area, several previously clear ponds became covered with it last year.
Generally, it's nutrient enrichment. It's where the water is coming from. So it's anything you can do to make the water cleaner. Really is the key. It doesn't tend to dominate in clear where you got clean water. And the other thing to say is if there is still shade, quite a lot of canopy cover, that does also favour duckweed because it's shade tolerant. So the key thing really is de-shading ponds, opening the canopy up, but having the water as clean as possible. So if you have inflows, for example, that drag in water from farmland, that's your reason. I bet that's the reason.
Okay, thank you. Hopefully that's answered Neil's question. I can't see any more questions in the chat, so hopefully everybody's had their questions answered. Unless there's any more, you've got your last couple of minutes to quickly ask those. I've put, with Carl's permission, your email in there, so you better perhaps turn off your email tomorrow, Carl, because I think you'll be inundated.
I'm about to change emails, Tracy. Yeah.
I think that might be a good idea because you've generated lots of conversation this evening. Again, we've got people in the chat saying once again a big thank you, and they've already sent you an email, so it was too late. You haven't turned it off quick enough.
Well, I believe it or not, my email every day is full of people asking me about ponds.
Right. So if people have emailed, here's your apology in advance that it won't be a quick 2-minute turnaround because of your volume of emails, and
I'll
after
do my
tonight
best
will
anyway.
be more. Bless you. Thank you so much for joining us this evening, Carl,
Thank you,
and
Tracy.
giving us an insight to everything. We're so pleased that we were able to be part of this project and provide some funding. If only we had that crystal ball and a big pot of money to be able to help more, but who knows what tomorrow brings. We didn't know in the first place we was going to be able to help, so it's fantastic. And if anyone knows of any pots of money out there, I'm sure Carl would be first in the queue to have some of that.
Or just put money in the post in a brown envelope.
I'll cut out the middleman. Yeah, you don't want the
just cut the middleman out, and just money in the post in a brown envelope, and I'll go do secret ponds.
Bless you.
Yeah.
Oh, Pearl's saying metal detect. There you go.
Yeah,
Perhaps you might find some
detector.
money in the ponds that you know, even when you're looking.
So I've got a metal detector, and I had it for years. So I've metal detected ever since I was little as well. So I've always been a detectorist.
Why does that
I never get the time to
surprise us?
Never quite get the time to do the detecting around the spoil like I should do. So maybe Pearl needs to get in touch. Has come in as our Norfolk Ponds Project detectorist.
There's an offer, Pearl. There you go. Once you get involved with Carl's projects, you never get away.
You can't get away now.
Unfortunately, also apologies. Tim Holt Wilson, who you spoke about, Carl, was trying to get into the meeting. I tried to admit him time after time, and he couldn't get in. I even emailed him and said, "Tim, turn your computer off and turn it back on again. The good old turn off, turn on, and you might get in." But he hasn't managed to get in because he probably could have added more to this as well. Bless him.
He could have done,
so apologies, I'm sure, from him. Carl, is there anything else you want to add before we say our goodbyes?
I just want to say thank you, Tracy, for being a magnificent host.
Thank you. You made it easy. We won't tell them about our tech difficulties at the beginning. They didn't see all that.
No, all I can say is that during the whole thing, I'm seeing all the chat and it's all flashing up everywhere, and I couldn't move without using the mouse. I couldn't use the buttons. So definitely something funny, but we got through it.
Oh, thank you. Thanks again.
And
thank you to Claire as well from Salk for being with us and representing them as well and getting this all sort of helping us get this off the ground as well. Just lastly, before we've got 1 minute left, what we will do is get the webinar. It's been recorded, so we'll get it into a format that we can share and get around to people. Unfortunately, that also doesn't happen overnight. So that will be sometime next week, but please watch your inboxes for that, and that will be sent your way so you can share that out. Thank you once again for joining this evening. We are hoping to have a third webinar later on in the year, and when the details of that are around, we will share them with Claire and her team, so you can be first to book on and join in with the next webinar. Details of that will follow in due course. And now, as it's actually 7 o'clock, I wish you all a good evening. Thank you so much for joining.